Hey everyone! In our recent video we looked at some red wriggler worms for some composting. Today we're going to look at another composting technique using small animals. Today we're going to use black soldier flies. So black soldier flies are unique in that they're a voracious little fly larva. They'll eat almost anything. They'll eat meats, they'll eat manures, they'll eat fresh fruits and vegetables, they'll eat grains. So we're going to give this a try. I've never raised these before. The big benefit to this is it not only makes you some nice compost, but it also makes a highly nutritious protein for your livestock. These can be fed directly to chickens, they can be fed to pigs directly, and if you mix it with the appropriate grains, you can also grind them up and feed them to your cattle. So, let's give protein farming a try. So now that we have 5,000 black soldier fly larvae in here, first thing we need to do for these guys is to create an environment for feeding them. Normally in Africa we would be feeding these guys a combination of household wastes, rotten fruits and vegetables. We could be feeding them waste from perhaps a butchery, so these guys can handle meats, they can handle fats, they can handle prepared cooked foods. They also handle very well pig manure and cow manure or chicken manure. So normally we'd be using waste streams from our farm so we could create valuable food for our livestock. And this basically replaces fish meal. So once these are matured, we can grind these up and we can make a protein source to add to our feedstock, thus saving us money not having to go to the feed store. So today, since I'm stuck in America due to COVID, and it's also winter time, it's harder for me to get some of those inputs that are readily available in Zambia. So today we're going to actually feed them cattle feed. So I've got a feed here that's appropriate for cattle, goats, and sheep, and it has some molasses mixed into it, so it has a little bit of sugar content. And we're actually going to ferment that with a little bit of baker's yeast. So we're going to be adding this baker's yeast to it, and hopefully creating a food source for these. I'm also going to be feeding scraps from our household into here, same as with the worms. So it's a little silly to take animal feed to grow animal feed, but this was just the low-cost alternative in my area. And like I said, once I get back to Africa, we'll try this experiment again with wild-caught soldier flies and with our farm waste. So let's get started. Okay, so now that we've got our black soldier fly, we need to make some feed for them. So basically, I have this plastic tub here. Let's see, it's about a cubit long, about half a cubit wide, and it's about as deep as my fingers. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get maybe 5 centimeters depth of feed in here, and we can't just put dry feed in here. They're going to need it to be moist, kind of like our worms. So they're going to want like 70 to 80% moisture in their feed. Just for the purpose of this experiment, I'm going to be weighing each one, just so I know how much that weighed in feed when we started, so I can calculate how much it costs to keep these guys. The other thing we're going to be doing is I'm going to be adding 2 tablespoons of this baker's yeast. I'll mix that up in water and I'll put that in last. Once we get everything good and mixed up, we'd like this to be an even consistency, and since we're starting as hard pellets, this might take some work. So I'll probably fast forward for some of this, but enjoy the ride. Alright, so I've got our scale in kgs, and I'm just going to tear our container here. So now it says 0 kgs. Now I'm going to put some food in here, and we're going to see how much weight it takes to get this bin filled just a little under half full. So this is about 3/4 of a liter of this feed, and it weighs 0.536 kilograms. And I'm going to need at least 2 more of these. Okay, so I have about 1.5 kilograms of feed in here, and I'm going to start adding water to this now because I'm sure that this is going to expand, and I don't want this to reach up to the top of our bucket and make it easy for the larvae to escape. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to fill up this 3/4 of a liter container twice, and I'm going to add that in there, and we'll see what that looks like. So this is what our mixture looks like. You can see there's some water floating around on the top there. We're going to let this soak for maybe an hour or two and see if these pellets will break up for us. That actually didn't take very long. So you can see this is uniformly wet. Our pellets have broken down nicely. And so now we're just going to add the last ingredient, and that's some yeast. So for our intents and purposes, I'm going to assume that our feed is actually sterile, and we want to add some biological agents to it. So we're going to add some yeast in here, and they're going to hopefully give us some fermentation. And that fermentation is going to help break down the more fibrous stuff in here that might be hard for the black soldier flies, and also the black soldier flies can feed on the growing yeast. So we're just going to take some baker's yeast. This is active dry yeast, and it's a brand new can. Here, pop. So we're going to take 2 tablespoons of this yeast, and we're going to add it to 1/4 of a liter of warm water. With yeast, the key is that the water needs to be lukewarm. If it's cold, you might not activate the yeast, and if it's much warmer than the temperature of your body, you can actually kill the yeast because they can't survive high temperatures. So there's our 2 tablespoons in there. And we're just going to stir that up, let it set, let those particles dissolve in there a little bit. So let's keep giving that a stir, get that nice yeasty smell. Same yeast that we use to make bread. So you get this at any of the bakery shops if you need to add some whatever you're feeding. Now we're going to take the yeast water and we're just going to apply it evenly to our feed. So we want to get that yeast all in there, and that's going to make this more biologically active. Just let that soak in before we add our larvae. And while we're at it, we can just mix this in with our hands. Make sure it gets in evenly distributed everywhere. Also helps break up some of those pellets that might not have quite fallen apart yet. Basically has the consistency of fresh cotton ore at this point, which is good. That's what our larvae will actually want to be eating, so this should be a reasonable surrogate for that. And then I'm just going to fluff it up a little bit. I don't want it too compact, I want the larvae to be able to wiggle their way in there. Alright, now I'm back and we're ready to add our larvae. So we're just going to sprinkle this across the top, and I'm going to let them burrow in all by themselves as they're comfortable. Just going to try to evenly sprinkle these guys around and let them start munching. So here you can see the little black soldier fly larvae, and they're going to start burrowing into the substrate and hopefully find their food. So these guys start out quite small, but in a couple weeks they'll be quite large. I'm going to be monitoring this every day, make sure that it remains wet and doesn't turn into a hard cake that they can't get through. And we're also going to be monitoring this to make sure that there's enough food left, because I'm really not sure how much these guys are going to eat. Like I said, this is my first time with BSF, so we're going to be experimenting and learning together.